Cimoooooooo! What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing to you my competitive tier list for the May 2020 format. It seems with online tournaments firing off so rapidly that the meta is continuing to evolve even more quickly than it otherwise would. With so many tournaments taking place, I want to make sure you guys are up to date with what the top strategies are that you can expect to see in terms of representation as well as power level. Now, before we get into it, I want to let you guys know that the Pro Play Tour is also doing an online circuit of their very own, the Weekend Championship. You have the opportunity to win some insane prize money every single weekend by competing in one of these tournaments. Click the link down in the description if you want to pre-register for any of them. I will be commentating them every once in a while, but either way, you have the opportunity to win some incredible prizing nonetheless. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the tier list. Here we go over on Tier Maker. First and foremost, just want to put this out there, COVID-19 is still ruining everything and is going to be definitively tier 0 until we start to get back to any bit of normal whatsoever, so we're just going to get that out of the way now. Now, when we go through the tiers, when you look at tier 1, 2, rogue, everything else, you want to keep in mind that the top decks of the tier list are going to be what you're going to be seeing the most often, as well as the strongest decks, and as you go down the tiers, their power level starts to diminish, as well as their representation in the overall metagame. I'm taking this data based off of a lot of the results from the online tournament scenes that have been taking place, so we're just going to go through deck by deck until we're able to fill in this chart to its entirety. I'm not going to be able to do every deck, that'd be like an hour-long video, but I took the majority of the ones that matter. So, starting off with, looks like good old Dante here. Fortunately, Burning Abyss isn't really kicking right now. I know a couple people are still trying to play it, but the problem is, I think with decks like Eldritch that are just like the much more recursive, powerful deck, but Burning Abyss doesn't really have its place in the meta at the moment. And you're not really going to be seeing a lot of it. Not that there aren't people that are going to try it, but it's definitely fallen from any sort of favorability whatsoever. Hero has actually declined as well. There are still there's Hero fans out there, right? Hero is one of the most biggest cult following decks in existence, and Hero always has interesting matchups because you have access to stuff like Dark Law, right? It's super cool. People are going to continue to play the deck, but again, at any sort of high tier of competitive play, don't expect to see any Hero, maybe even like one at the very most, but you won't be seeing it anywhere. It was kind of like a roguish pick maybe a couple formats ago, but now it's definitely fallen even behind in that regard. Still very powerful turn 1 boards, but there's other decks that can do it way better than Hero can. Altergeist. Altergeist is going to be our first rogue pick. This is a deck, some people might want to put this in tier 2, but frankly, it doesn't really have the numbers to support that in my view. It's a deck that some people are able to see a moderate amount of success with, but when you start to get to like the ends of tournaments, Altergeist just starts to fall off relative to the other decks that you see, and so for those reasons, that's why I'm putting it in the rogue tier status. It's a deck that you're probably going to be seeing more often than like these decks, just as an example. That's why it's here, but again, there are better options out there. But if you like Altergeist, it's not the worst deck at the moment. Just don't expect to be doing incredibly well by comparison to some other picks. Cyber Dragon is another one. This is going in the rogue pick. Cyber Dragon, again, just representation-wise, isn't really doing anything. This deck has had its moments in the past, but as of right now, really no one's on it. It's got some cute tricks that it can do. Being Cyber Dragon, it's an OTK deck, but there's so many other better decks out there that just do it better than Cyber Dragon right now. So again, if you're one of the few Cyber Dragon players out there, good for you, but you're not going to be seeing many of you out there, so don't expect any mirror matches anytime soon. Infernoid's another one. This deck, like, it was so cool having this blind going second Infernoid deck, and you think a deck of like DD Crows is really good against graveyard decks, but again, the numbers aren't there to support it, so I'm putting it in the everything else category. Invoked. So this is basically representative of Invoked Mech Knight, and this is going to be the first tier 2 deck that we're going to discuss. This deck has a lot of really cool things going for it. The Invoked engine is so concise, so you don't really have to play a lot of cards just to get the value of the Invoked half of the deck, and the Mech Knights have this going second aspect to it that allow you to break boards rather easily and can actually do a lot of really cool things. Some of these decks are starting to incorporate a card like Rainbow Neos just as this absolutely incredible finisher, having your Alistairs and your Mech Knights bait out all the other negations, then you slam down Neos Fusion or go into a Verte Anaconda with your Invoked and Mech Knight monsters, and you're able to just win the game against some of the top decks, and it's not bad. Like, there's actually data to support this deck in the tier 2 status that Invoked Mech Knight is able to convert at the top tiers of competitive play versus some of these other options. So that's why I've got it in tier 2. Some people may disagree, but I definitely think it's worthy of that spot. At the very least, it would be at like the top of Rogue if you want to go for there. Guru's another one that really just hasn't converted. There's been like one or two in like very small tournaments that's been able to get like into the top cuts. But again, like if you're going to go between like Guru and Geist has actually been doing a little bit better representation wise and as well as converting. So I think for those reasons, Geist is just going to have to kind of stick on its own above Guru for once. Usually these decks are like hand in hand, but you know, it's kind of hard. This deck can play There Can Be Only One though, and that card's pretty decent. Pendulum. We're actually putting Pendulum in Rogue. Pendulum has been doing moderately well, definitely more so since last time around. Pendulum is able to do some really good things like Pendulum has always been able to do, building boards. It's able to do a lot of unique things that not a lot of other decks can interact with very well. It does definitely still struggle, but it is still a deck that people are playing. There's fervent players when it comes to this deck that just absolutely love it, and you are going to continue to see it. But again, don't expect to see too many. That's why I'm putting it at Rogue, because the power level is good, but the representation isn't there to support it. Next up is Generator. This is an interesting one. This is a new deck out of, well, it's not new, but Lopter came out in Eternity Code, and that's kind of what brought the deck all together. I guess Horror being in that set helped as well. This deck is rather interesting. It's very unique and has actually been seeing a moderate amount of play at the top tables in the top, I don't want to say the top cuts, but the later rounds of the tournament. This deck has had like multiple bubble appearances in this current meta. It's a brand new deck. It has a very unique play style that's rather interesting. A lot of people didn't have a lot of faith of it at first, but then once we got Lopter and some of the cards to kind of bring and unite the deck together, it's actually not too bad. There is some experimentation there, and so I definitely thought it was worth mentioning that. Keep your eye out on this deck. There is some potential here, and some people are actually on this more than you might think. So now we're going to get to our first tier 1 deck here, and oh boy, Eldritch. So this deck has just undergone such a ridiculous evolution, right? First we had Pure Eldritch, then we had Invoked Eldritch, then there was like, what, Lightsworn Eldritch, and now we're on Auroradon Combo Eldritch, which is like one of the most insane things ever. A single Jet Synchron can turn into a Borreload Savage Dragon and Herald of the Arclight, or even something like a Hyper Librarian and draw you like 4 cards. So a single Jet Synchron plus a discard is like a +5, and then you have all the other Eldritch cards in addition to that. This deck is absurd and is only going to continue to get more powerful as people continue to refine it. Remember, in the old days, Eldritch was like still a very good deck, but now it's gotten to this point where it's even stronger. This deck might be getting hit on the ban list if we do get one, but yeah, definitively Eldritch is at tier 1, and then also we have Adamancipator at tier 1 as well. It's really kind of like a 2-deck format fighting for tier 1 at this point. Some people may say that Adamancipator is still above Eldritch, but with the new Auroradon Eldritch variant, I actually think it's just slightly better than Adamancipator, but frankly, if your money's on either one of these decks to win any event, you're probably going to be doing pretty good for yourself. Adamancipator just took me by surprise. I know on my last list, I called it a rogue deck, but frankly, I was not expecting any of what we saw in this deck with the combination of cards like the Dododo Dwarf, Go 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 Glove, all those Automata pack cards that provide the free rank 4 synergy to go into Gallic Granite, and then just allow you to extend further because all the cards are rocks, all the cards are earths primarily, so that means you have Block Dragon synergy. That was the other half of the deck that was missing. The Adamancipator cards already looked good enough, but it was that part of the deck that really took it over the top in tandem with cards like Quackimiru Guardian as well, and just made it this absurdly powerful combo deck that you now see today. So I was wrong, I admit it, and that's okay, but now you guys know these are the 2 decks. If you're planning on going to any event, these are the 2 decks you need to be eyeing, and these are the 2 decks that are pretty much going to be dominating about like 80% of the format for the most part, especially if you're doing very well. Next up is Orcust. This is such a tough one for me because, like, I want to put this here because Mech Knight Girsu is just such an insane card for the deck. The deck can still do stuff like Dragon Buster Destruction Lock, which is incredible against stuff like Adamancipator. I guess even Combo Eldritch to agree, but, like, there are ways to out it and such, but, like, it hasn't been putting up the numbers. The thing is, there have been a decent amount of people playing the deck, and so, like, the representation is there, especially post-Eternity Code, to justify it, but, like, right now, it's in this weird spot where it's like, it has a high number of representation relative to some of these other decks, but, like, it's not converting whatsoever. Granted, it is still early on in the format. I'm gonna put this at the very, very bottom of tier 2 and, like, the very top of Rogue, so, like, if there was, like, a void here where you could put another card, I think that's where Orcust would go. It's just so weird right now. I mean, the deck seems so good. It's this combo control deck that can do so much, but, like, if we're talking combo control deck, I think Eldritch just does it better right now, and that's kind of where Eldritch is just outclassing so many different decks. However, I do have faith. It is early on. We see Eldritch go under 4 different evolutions, so maybe Orcust will do the same. We'll just have to see. Grunt Maju, this is Rogue. People still want to play their one-punch decks, and that's perfectly fine, but you're not going to see this too often like you would in the past. This deck is just not nearly as good. Salamangreat is still pretty, it's decent, I'll say. It's not like the best, of course, but it's still kicking. It's got some interesting lineups with the top tier 1 strategies at the moment. It's able to hold its own. Its recursion is what is able to keep it in the game, and while it doesn't excel in any particular area, it's able to kind of have matchups really good against the top contenders, but as well as like the mid-tier and the rogue decks as well. Salamangreat can pretty much deal with any of these decks really easily, so it's really just a matter of, we've seen it in top cuts, but it's just a matter of being able to see it in high enough numbers. The numbers aren't really there, but its conversion rate for the numbers is very high, so that's why I'm putting it tier 2. People also love the deck, so it's not really too surprising. Next up, we have Water. This is another interesting one. Like, I want to put this in everything else, but there are like a couple Water decks that are doing somewhat well. So again, like maybe we'll put it here, but then like drag it to the front of everything else. This is an incredible deck that got a ton of support out of Eternity Code with Deep Sea Aria, Deep Sea Minstrel, just basically making combos even crazier with like your own Neo-Spatian Aqua Dolphin effect, being able to rip cards out of your opponent's hand, even more so than with Mulan Glacia, and you're able to just perform some absurd turn 1 boards and hand loops with this deck. You think the deck is so good, but then it isn't able to convert, and that's where I have a hard time putting this anywhere else. Again, I want to put this like at the top of like everything else, bottom of Rogue, so it's kind of like Orcust, where it's like if there was that middle point, I would put it there. Rocket, I want to put Rocket in Rogue. There are still people playing Rocket Dragon Link just because it is a pretty solid combo deck. Again, Adamancipator is just like the better combo deck, but there's enough of these running around that I still want to just give you guys some warning that Rocket is out there, and so just bear in mind that that is the case. Madolche, I'm going to go ahead and put in Rogue. So we saw this happen at the Pro Play Tour in Weekend Championship not too long ago, but also there was like a tournament in Europe. I think it was like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Online series that Madolche topped both events in the same weekend, and it's kind of started this surge, and the deck isn't bad. It got support in Eternity Code with Salon and Promenade, and so ever since then, it's had this like ripple effect where people want to actually experiment with the deck, and you're seeing it now more often than you were before. So even though, you know, jury's still out if it's decent enough, it actually was able to crack some Adamancipator and Eldritch boards, shockingly enough. But, you know, it's still kind of these decks, it might just be kind of a result of the popularity, so it might decline, but I actually am going to put it in the Rogue tier for the time being. Invoke Shaddoll has just like fallen off the face of the planet, and I think that's just due to Eldritch being everywhere, because this deck almost like hard counters Invoke Shaddoll because it really just doesn't care about anything, and so there's hardly any Invoke Shaddoll players anywhere, and so if you hate the deck, that's pretty good. But yeah, I mean, just the deck that used to be the best deck of the format now falling from grace, that's pretty incredible. Dinosaur, I'm putting Dinosaur at tier 2. This did get the Animadorned Archosaur from the most recent Eternity Code set, and there's some crazy things you can do with that. There's like insane hand loops, there's just more ways to access cards like True King of All Calamities, so I want to put this at the tier 2 category. I think that's a pretty solid bet, and people still really love the deck, of course. It's Dinosaur. And last but not least, I've got Zoodiac. I'm gonna put Zoodiac in Rogue because people are playing this in pretty decent numbers. It's able to get to pretty high stages and late stages of tournaments, but again, it doesn't really have the best of conversion, but representation wise, you can expect to see a lot of it. It's pretty interesting to see Zoodiac just on a lone Trident and having their big boss monster in that Affinitrack 4K that's unaffected by monster effects. It's a neat win condition, and apparently it's good enough for Zoodiac to see some amount of success. So guys, that's gonna do it for my tier list. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. And if you found this video helpful, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. Just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.